Confronted my husband about his lack of desire and ongoing celibacy, not wanting divorce, but desperately missing intimacy in our marriage. I, 37F, love my husband, 41 male, more than anything. However, he's had such a low libido over the last 3 years that I'm really starting to wondering if I can do this much longer. Is divorce really the only option when everything else is so right? He is not cheating, his T levels have been tested and are normal, he is not overweight, he had a strong drive early in the relationship, he has Viagra but it doesn't really do much. Yeah, it helps hold an erection, but it doesn't generate any desire and it gives him migraines. My husband is incredible. He works probably 60 to 80 hours a week to provide above and beyond what we need. Our house is gorgeous, my car and overall safety is his priority. He shows love through acts of service and gift giving, it's constant. I have to watch what I say around him or he'll find whatever and get it for me. He's patient, reliable, generous, kind, hardworking, faithful, and he's sexy. But even after maybe 4 to 6 hard discussions about sex over the past 3 years, some discussions that caused me to cry, he doesn't get it. I've told him to write it on a calendar, that it doesn't even need to be penetration. I've kept up my end by giving oral whenever the mood strikes. I don't always want to, but he deserves it and it's what I'd want to. And that's just it. Even after saying I'm human, I didn't sign up for forced celibacy, just give me a little something here and there, it's nada. I'm starting to really think we're never going to have a family even though he always talks about growing our family and having a child one day. But forget a baby, I can't even get him to do me. Nothing. Not even try. So I try to water our grass as much as I can, but I'm doing it 100% alone and damn it, non-stop sex is a pro for marriage and I'm young and hot and want it. What is the deal? So today, we're having another discussion. I'm at a loss for words at this point. I'm not going to leave him. There's no ultimatum to give. I've cried, I've been mad, I've approached it love, I've tried to model the sexual romance I'm seeking, I feel I've tried it all. I just want him to be happy, which I guess he is, like really happy and satisfied which I know I can provide. I love sex. Hard, soft, spicy, vanilla, penetration, oral, porn, all of it. I never thought I'd be here. Please, after digesting all this context, if there's anything that you think would resonate when we talk tonight, other than begging, which I've done, share your insight. I know a lot of you will say to look inwards. I have and will continue to do so. Please trust me that I've been more than patient, understanding, and helpful. Also, I wouldn't accept weight or appearance as an excuse to ignore your partner for 3 years, but I'm 5 feet 5 inches 120 pounds and have maintained this weight my entire adult life. He is not gay. Lastly, when I point blank ask him what the deal is, he never gives me a real answer. And I know he's sick of this too, which is why I can't understand why he wouldn't just throw me a bone once in a while to shut me up. This is the only issue we have. But boy, it's a big one. He works probably 60 to 80 hours a week. These are new hours. It hasn't been like this for 3 years, but if this is the issue, how do I ease the stress so we can have sex? We peck, kiss and sometimes cuddle into each other at night. I'm fine that. I don't need much more physical touch regularly. But I do need sex as an outlet. And to connect my husband. Update 1. So of course, there's a deep sadness that stems from no desire or intimacy from the only person in the world that matters, and from the person who promised time and time again he'd pay more attention to my needs, and from the person who otherwise goes above and beyond every day for me. It's been so confusing and at times, just downright cruel. He's never given me an answer or reason. He's never ever said anything other than he loves me and he'll try harder, literally y'all, I told him to put it on a calendar, I don't care. Just do me. And he couldn't even do that. After posting asking for help BC I was planning to have yet another talk with him, I got so much great, but hard, feedback. Why are you talking again? He's been very clear he doesn't want sex. It won't get better so you have to decide for yourself to stay or go. He's lying to you. So true. So wise. But so painful. I got upset, deleted the thread, drove around for an hour in tears mourning us and my whole vision of our future, a vision he said he wants too. That vision includes trying to have one kid. I just want my little angel, if it's meant to be. And of course, I want a happy healthy husband. It all felt like it came crashing down and I couldn't handle being advised to leave him. I'm sorry to you guys for bailing when you were in fact taking the time to offer great advice. And I did follow your advice and said fuck the convo. He knows what the problem is. And yes, to everyone's point, WTH was I going to say anyway? That night was calm, but I just got stoned when I got home and turned on LOTR. He stayed out of my way, I still didn't know what to say or how to say it, and was still digesting your words. Next day, yesterday. Woke up. First thought, fuck this. I deserve a convo and I'm going to tell this MF exactly what I fucking feel and that includes an ultimatum for divorce. So I told him that morning. Including the divorce part. Well. I'm in our closet changing after work and he comes in and closes the door. We have a big closet with a seating area where we chat sometimes, but never close the door. He says, look, and he pulls out his weenie and it's covered a rash that has one open wound. He said, this is awful for me to talk about. I have genital psoriasis. I got it from the stress of my brain injury. He was in the hospital for a month, couldn't hold a job, moved in by himself for a year before he felt he could function in society again. It's incurable, very painful, and flares up with stress. I looked at his dick and then looked him straight in the eye and said, "You've put me through hell for 3 years BC of this? You almost made me call off our wedding BC of this? You brought me to tears and made me question my own womanhood BC of this?" The conversation continued. Him, I know. I don't know what to say. I was scared to death. It's not contagious. Me, I know it's not. I wouldn't care if it was. I don't think you're cheating. But you've lied to me this entire time. You broke my heart over and over all BC of your pride and embarrassment over something totally fine and normal. I know. This is really hard for me and I'm trying to be vulnerable. I can tell he's physically uncomfortable at this point. No. No, it does not. I get what you're saying. At this point he brought up me sharing my ovulation schedule with him. He said he keeps it and tracks it, and unfortunately while he knows I peaked Saturday, he has an outbreak right now, as he showed me. That's no problem at all, but you have to tell me. As far as I knew, you were just ignoring the whole thing and that was awful. I'm thinking I'm on this boat with you and we're a team, and next thing I know I'm on an island by myself. We left it with an agreement that he'll let me know when he feels good and then I'll initiate when I'm in the mood. I've done a ton of research on this BC, as you all know I love this man and want to fix this, so I've learned about responsive advances and I think this may work better for him. Is this exactly what I wanted? Yes and no. Yes BC, I have cold hard facts that directly contribute to this issue. I already feel sexier and more in control. No BC, we're still going to have to wait to see if he takes initiative when he doesn't have an outbreak, which will be hard right now BC of the heat and his work hours. And yes, I did say that we could always downsize and that we can rethink having a child if money was the root of his stress. That all this, gesturing broadly, isn't worth losing this, gesturing between him and I. He swore it isn't and that he's in a great, but stressful position right now, and of course the 110-degree heat isn't helping. Overall, I'm satisfied. I feel lighter, reinvigorated to meet him where he is, and more confident as a woman. For the first time in a long time we had real intimacy. That moment in the closet was non-physical intimacy which I so desperately crave, and I now have a much better understanding of his mindset so I can adjust my attempts to seduce him. Wild ride. Update 2. We had our breakthrough and then he had to travel for work, but it gave me a few days to 1, digest everything, and 2, get all the products you guys recommended. He came home to his side of the bed full of different soaps, lotions, and underwear. I never said a word. He poked around and pulled some stuff out and took it to the bathroom. He said he doesn't like the Bombas undies I got, but that he knows a brand he does like. They're just too expensive. This is a whole new layer to this. He literally said no to this expensive underwear BC, he'd rather spend that kind of money on me or something we both need. We've got to work on him knowing he is worth whatever the cost that's needed to bring him happiness. He's totally worth expensive undies, the derm visits, the shots and creams. If I have to pay every cent to get him there, that's fine. He takes complete care of me and would do the same. I also have Rex for docs, but that'll come later. I'm just so grateful he wasn't put off by me trying to help. He was open and curious, and we've even chatted a bit about the patterns he experiences when he has an outbreak. I felt so much more confident too. I was always awkward and uncomfortable kind of, not BC of him necessarily, but it was the constant rejection that just made me so confused. Does he even want me to touch him? Does he even like me? But now I'm rolling all over him and he's being so receptive. Grabbing me and dragging me all over him too. Calling me beautiful while looking in my eyes. Kissing my face, my head, my mouth. When it's time to get up I just simply say I don't want to hurt you and he picks me up and helps me off him. Easy peasy. Even this morning, I went to get up around 6 and he sleepily said no. Y'all, this man hasn't cared if I came or went for 3 years. Well, yes. He probably has but never knew how to say it BC, he knew I'd think sex and he couldn't do that. Gah. What a mind fuck for everyone involved. Eek. Now I just gotta chill and not be too much. Talk about it, but not too much. Help him, but not too much. It may take another 3 years, but at least now we're moving forward. I also now have an arsenal of sexually explicit things we can do that won't hurt him, thanks to all the men and women who've learned to navigate this with their loved ones. It's a new day, folks. And you apologized for your reaction when you asked him if he could go down on you when you saw his penis, right? Update 3. I don't even know where to start, because everything has shifted so fast it feels like I'm living in a completely different reality. It's like I went from banging my head against a brick wall for 3 years, feeling completely invisible, to suddenly having a husband who sees me, wants me, and is actually working with me instead of leaving me to drown in frustration. So, here's what happened. A couple of nights ago, I was lying in bed, reading, when he came in from his late shift. I expected the usual, him showering, maybe pecking me on the forehead, then rolling over and falling asleep immediately. But instead, he just stood there, looking at me. It was weird at first. He wasn't saying anything, just staring. Then he took a deep breath, sat down next to me, and said, "I need to tell you something else." I swear my heart stopped. I thought, what now? More secrets? Is he dying? Does he have some other disorder I don't know about? He looked so raw. Like he was about to confess to a murder. I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it, he continued. I've never told anyone, not even my doctor. But it's not just the psoriasis. It's not just stress. I have something else. And it's been ruining my life in ways I didn't even realize until you almost left me. Guys. He told me he has persistent genital arousal disorder, PGAD. I had never even heard of this before, but apparently, it's this rare neurological condition where your body is constantly aroused, even when you don't want to be. Like, think of a never-ending tickle that you can't scratch, and instead of pleasure, it turns into agony. He said this started after his brain injury. It never happened before. But ever since then, he gets these episodes where he feels like he's on the edge of orgasm for hours, sometimes days, and nothing helps. Not masturbating, not having sex, nothing. In fact, having sex makes it worse because it just resets the cycle, trapping him in this awful loop of discomfort. I was shook. Everything suddenly made sense. Why he never gave me a real answer. Why he avoided sex like the plague. Why he always seemed so tense but never sought out any release. Why he shut down every time I tried to have this conversation. And then, I lost it. Not at him. At the situation. At the unfairness of it all. I started crying, like, full-on ugly sobbing. I was grieving for him, for me, for the wasted years of miscommunication and pain we both went through because he was too scared and ashamed to tell me. And then, brace yourselves, I asked him a question that completely shattered me. Do you even like sex? Like, at all? He hesitated. Looked so pained. Then, finally, he admitted, I used to. I loved it. But now? It just feels like torture. I hate it. I hate thinking about it. I hate being expected to do it. I hate disappointing you. I hate my body for betraying me. And I hate myself for not telling you sooner. I cannot explain the whirlwind of emotions that hit me in that moment. Relief that I finally understood. Anger that he kept this from me for so long. Deep, aching sadness that the man I love has been suffering in silence because he was too ashamed to ask for help. We talked for hours. I asked him if he's ever brought this up to a doctor. He hasn't. He was too embarrassed. He thought they'd just tell him to relax or that it was all in his head. So now? We're making a plan. Together. He's seeing a specialist. I already found a neurologist who deals with GAD. I told him I'd go with him if he wanted. He actually agreed, which is huge for him. We're redefining intimacy. He admitted that a huge part of his avoidance was fear that if he initiated anything, I'd expect it to escalate into sex, which he just couldn't handle. So now? We're starting over. I told him I'd be just as happy lying in bed and making out for hours if that's all he could do. No pressure, no expectations, just connection. We're experimenting with non-triggering pleasure. Since traditional sex is out, we're exploring what does work for him. Sensory stuff. Kissing. Touching. Even bonding exercises, because intimacy isn't just about orgasms, and I don't want him to feel like a failure just because his body doesn't work the way it used to. Therapy. I told him straight up, we're getting therapy, together and separately. He needs help processing this, and so do I. We've both been suffering alone for too long. Honestly? I feel hopeful for the first time in years. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in forever, I feel like we're finally fighting this battle together, instead of me fighting against him. Update 4. Phew. Buckle up, because the last few weeks have been an absolute whirlwind. If I thought our last conversations were life-changing, I was not prepared for what was coming next. So, where did we leave off? Oh yeah, real intimacy, baby steps, a newfound confidence, and a game plan. Well, things took a sharp left turn from hopeful progress to holy shit, what is happening in a way I never expected? Let me start with the good, the communication between us. Next level. It's like a dam finally broke, and suddenly, we're talking, like really talking, about everything. Not just sex, but fears, anxieties, dreams, things we've never even touched on before. I swear I've learned more about my husband in the past few weeks than I did in our entire relationship. And let me tell you, that vulnerability? It's been hot. I don't mean sexy in the traditional sense, but there is something wildly attractive about seeing your partner drop their guard completely. But then, the not so great. A few days after he got back from his work trip, he had a full-blown mental and physical crash. I'm talking about extreme fatigue, migraines, body aches, the whole works. At first, we assumed it was just exhaustion catching up with him, but then, things got weird. He started having memory lapses. Not like, oh, where did I put my keys? But full-on forgetting entire conversations we had just the day before. He'd stare at me blankly when I brought up things we'd talked about in depth. Then came the tremors in his hands. Then a day where he couldn't even stand without getting dizzy. So, obviously, I freaked out. Dragged him to the doctor immediately. Blood work, neurological exams, the works, and guess what? His stress-induced psoriasis was only the tip of the iceberg. Turns out, he's been battling something much, much bigger, something he's hidden from me for years. He has an autoimmune disorder. He's known about it for years. And he never told me. When the doctor finally sat us down with the results, my husband looked like he wanted to disappear. His immune system is essentially attacking his own body, which explains the flare-ups, the fatigue, the memory issues, and the worst part? This was diagnosed before we were even married. He just never told me. Why? Because, in his words, I didn't want you to see me as broken. I could have screamed. I could have thrown something. I could have cried. Okay, I did cry. But more than anything, I just felt this wave of deep, painful understanding. This man, the one who works himself to the bone to provide for me, the one who's been rejecting sex not because he doesn't want me, but because he's physically and mentally drained beyond comprehension, he's been carrying this alone for years. Out of pride, fear, whatever you want to call it. I was mad. I am mad. But I also love him. And now, I finally see him. So what now? Now, we start over. New rules. New priorities. His health comes first. No more 80-hour work weeks. No more avoiding doctor's appointments. And for the love of all things holy, no more keeping massive life-altering secrets from me. The intimacy part? It's actually getting better. Now that the truth is out, the tension has lifted in ways I didn't even know were possible. I finally feel like we're on the same team. It's slow, it's not perfect, but damn it, it's real. If nothing else, this journey has taught me that love isn't just about attraction or sex, it's about showing up, even when things get ugly. And right now, I'm showing up for my husband in the way he should have let me years ago. Update 5. So, after the whole autoimmune disorder revelation, I thought we were finally in a place of healing. I thought, okay, we have answers now, we're working together, we're moving forward. And for a little while, it actually felt that way. My husband took time off work, real time off, not his usual I'll just work from home bullshit. He started his treatments. We focused on rest, recovery, and reconnecting. For the first time in years, I saw him actually relax. He was smiling more, laughing more, we were having deep, meaningful conversations every day. And, for the first time in years, we were touching each other without this invisible wall of tension between us. It wasn't all about sex, it was about finally feeling wanted again. Holding hands, him pulling me into his lap, little stolen kisses in the kitchen. I felt like I was getting my husband back. But, of course, life wasn't done with us yet, because one night, about a week ago, I was up late reading in bed when my husband's phone buzzed. Now, let me be clear, I never go through his phone. Never have, never felt the need to. But this time, something in my gut told me to look. And when I did, well, let's just say my entire reality shifted. It was a text from someone named D. The message was short, "Hey, how are you holding up? I know this is hard. Let me know if you need me." My heart dropped. I didn't recognize the name, it wasn't a coworker, wasn't a family member. And the way it was worded, it didn't sound like some casual check-in. It sounded personal. It sounded like someone who knew exactly what he was dealing with. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I scrolled. And what I found? 2 years worth of messages. 2 years. Let me be clear, this was not an affair. At least, not in the way you might think. There was no sexting. No I love you-s. No plans to meet up in secret, but what I did find was an emotional connection so deep, so intimate, that it felt like a betrayal in its own right. This person, D, knew everything. They knew about his health issues before I did. They knew about his stress, his insecurities, his fears. They were the one he turned to when he felt like he couldn't talk to me. And the worst part? D was a woman. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like my entire chest was caving in. Because I was the one begging for intimacy. I was the one crying, wondering why my husband wouldn't open up to me. Meanwhile, he had a whole separate relationship, a deeply emotional one, with someone else. I didn't wake him up that night. I couldn't. I needed time to process. But the next morning, I was waiting for him in the kitchen, phone in hand. When he saw me, he immediately knew something was wrong. Me, who is D? Him, silence. Me, don't lie to me. I read the messages, and y'all, I have never seen this man look more terrified in his life. He didn't get defensive. He didn't try to lie his way out of it. He just sat down, put his head in his hands, and said, "I fucked up." Turns out, D is someone he met in an online support group for people with chronic illnesses. At first, it was innocent, just two people venting about the struggles of having a body that's constantly betraying them. But over time, she became his person, the one he could be completely honest with. The one he didn't have to be strong around. And while it never turned physical, he admitted that he did develop feelings for her. I asked him point blank, "Do you love her?" His answer? "I don't know." Gut punch. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, numb, as he explained that he never meant to hurt me. That he felt like he was protecting me by keeping all of this from me. That he was scared if he told me the truth, about his illness, about how broken he felt, I would see him differently. And the irony? By hiding it, by shutting me out, he did change how I see him. I told him I needed space. I packed a bag and stayed at my sister's for a few days. I didn't respond to his texts, didn't answer his calls. And honestly, I still don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do now. Because yes, this wasn't a physical affair. But in some ways, that makes it worse. He gave her the parts of himself that I begged for. He let her in while he pushed me out. So now I'm left wondering, is this something we can fix? Or is this the final nail in the coffin? Update 6. After taking a few days to process everything at my sister's, I finally agreed to meet with my husband. We decided on neutral ground, a quiet coffee shop where we wouldn't make a scene if things got heated. I walked in prepared for one of two things, either a desperate man begging for forgiveness, or a cold, detached version of him who had already checked out emotionally. Instead, I got something I never expected, someone who looked like he had aged 10 years in a matter of days. He was pale, exhausted, eyes swollen like he hadn't slept. As soon as I sat down, he said, "I've ended it with D." I blocked her. "It's done, and you'd think that would make me feel better, right?" But instead, I just stared at him and said, "And now what?" Because that was never the real problem. The real problem was why he felt the need to have her in the first place. Why he couldn't come to me. Why he let me drown in confusion and self-doubt for years while he confided in someone else. So I laid it all out. I told him every single way he had broken my heart. Every lonely night, every rejection, every time I sat in the car after work just dreading coming home to a marriage that felt like a ghost of what it used to be. And then he said something that completely shattered me. "I don't think I've ever wanted sex the way you do." Silence. The kind of silence that's so heavy it feels like it's pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. I managed to choke out, "What do you mean?" And he told me everything. He thought he was a highly sexual person in the beginning because, well, that's what he was supposed to be, right? That's what men are supposed to do, want sex all the time, initiate, be the one who can't keep their hands off their partner. And in the beginning, when it was new and exciting, he could play the part. He could convince himself that this was just how relationships worked. But as time went on, he realized something. He loves me, but he doesn't crave sex the way I do. He never has. It's not his illness. It's not stress. It's not low testosterone. It's just who he is. And the worst part? He didn't even realize it himself until recently. Until he was forced to confront why he kept making excuses. Why he kept pushing me away. Why he kept feeling relief instead of guilt when I finally stopped asking. And now, here we are. I feel like I'm grieving a marriage that I'm still technically in. Because what do you do when you love someone so much but realize that, at a fundamental level, you're completely mismatched? He cried. I cried. We sat there for hours, just talking, just existing in this weird, painful limbo of wanting so badly to make it work but knowing that love alone isn't always enough. We haven't made any decisions yet. I told him I need time to think, to figure out if I can accept a marriage where sex is rare, or if that's a deal breaker for me. He told me he doesn't want to hold me back from happiness, but he also doesn't want to lose me. So we're just waiting. I don't know what's going to happen next. But for the first time in a long time, I finally feel like I have the truth. And that's something.